Well, we're on a lunch break at the Alberta United Conservative Party conference. Very interesting keynote speech by the Premier. Lots of applause lines. For example, when she said she was going to call for reduced immigration, when she said she was going to crack down on biological men in women's places, including sports. But there were some raised eyebrows, including some gentle booing when the topic of the memorandum of understanding with the federal Liberals came up.
As you know, I support a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. I know we might have a bit of a difference of opinion on that, but I hope people today feel a lot more confident that Canada works than they did a couple of days ago.
Wow.
I'm going to chat a little bit with two of my colleagues to see what they think of the conference so far. Sheila, you were there in the big pit where 4,000 delegates were listening to the Premier. It's clear that they like her. Yeah. They're just worried that she might be getting bamboozled and hornswoggled on the MOU, that pipeline deal.
The pipeline deal is not popular with the grassroots. You can see that in the policy book. The resolutions that are proposed to hit the floor today, later on today, most of them deal with net zero, they deal with carbon taxes, they deal with federal government overreach. So the grassroots, I think, is fundamentally against the hike in the industrial carbon tax that is attached to that MOU. But I have seen the mainstream media reporting that Danielle Smith herself is being booed, and I completely reject that. She's very popular, lots of applause. They're booing the treatment of Alberta by Canada at the hands of the federal government. That's what those boos are about.
Yeah, I saw some of those headlines, very deceptive. One of the things I'm enjoying, Angelica, is how many independent journalists are here. That would not have been the case even 5 years ago. Not just Rebel News, and I think we've got 6 people on the ground here, but I see our friends from Juno, True North, I see Western Standard, and even people who I don't quite know. I think that independent journalism is changing and breaking the monopoly held by those regime journalists. What's your view?
It's amazing to see these independent voices. We have seen a few mainstream media here as well, but you can see that it's the independent media that is going around really talking to the people and getting the other side of the story, because what the mainstream media here is going to do, they're going to frame this a certain way, but here we give the voice to the people here, the members here, and everyone's happy to see us here.
Yeah, you know what? There are some regime journalists here, including from the CBC. I'm not going to say they're sullen, but they're definitely, their own mission is to undermine and to critique. And I'm quite certain that they're not doing genuine streeters, as we call them, because let's be honest, the regime media is despised by these folks. Sheila, I got a question for you. You know, during the Cold War, Richard Nixon was the president, and he was known as a staunch anti-communist. I mean, he really, that was one of his characteristics people knew about him. Yet he was the one who secretly did a deal with Communist China, the most authoritarian, abusive regime in the world, to get them to flip, to break away from the Soviet Union and to be open to the West. It was a strategic move to split the communist bloc. And there was a saying, only Nixon could go to China. The meaning is everyone knew that he was not a sympathizer. Everyone knew he hated the commies. So if Nixon said it was okay, you could trust him. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Is that what's going on here? Danielle Smith is such a strong Albertan. She's a sovereignty strengthener. She's a woke buster. So if she talks to Mark Carney, is it like Nixon going to China? She's really the only person who could be trusted to do it.
I think maybe that was her intent, but I think a lot of people are perfectly able to read that MOU and understand what it says. It says that Albertans will pay an enhanced industrial carbon tax for maybe nothing, for a pipeline that may never materialize. And when you see that the federal Conservatives are coming out against that enhanced carbon tax, and the former Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall, has come out against the MOU. A lot of people understand what that MOU means, and it's actually a lot of nothing except burdens for Albertans. So I do trust that Danielle Smith has Alberta's best interests at heart, but I think she's given up too much here.
I mean, I think back to Jason Kenney, who I used to know quite well. He was always one eye on Ottawa. He was always, yeah, and so I don't think anyone would have trusted Kenney with his MOU. Angelica, you've been spending a lot of time with the different delegates. They're all called United Conservative members. They're all called Conservative. It's really the merger of the old Wild Rose and the what used to be called the PCs. How many people here are actually independence-minded Albertans who, if this project fails, would be for independence?
Can't speak for the ministers, the MLAs specifically, but I do think if this project fails, the independence movement is going to skyrocket because it's going to be a bit of a failed promise on behalf of the UCP and Danielle Smith, and they've put so much trust into her, and I really think that it's going to be the breaking point because right now it's already starting to stir up, but if she has a failed promise as big as that, I think it's going to definitely change the movement.
I've talked to a ton of grassroots members over the day and a half that I've been here. Not a single one has said that they are not independence-minded. Not a single one has said, look, I don't like the separatist sentiment that is at the AGM. And it is. The separatist sentiment is really the story of the AGM. It's the MOU that's hanging in the air and then the separatists. This is, I think, a very strong showing for the Alberta Prosperity Project. It sounds like they're set to take over a lot of board positions.
And that's an advocacy group. We've been affiliated. We've done events with them, and they're more hardline.
Yeah, they're sort of the group that's advancing the conversation about independence and addressing the question about, you know, what happens if this, how do we do that? You know, they're participating in the board elections. They're very organized at this convention, and I think they're the underlying story in all of this, and they will ultimately hold Danielle Smith to account if nothing comes of that MOU.
That's right. Danielle Smith actually said yesterday, and she got booed for it, but she said Canada still works in response to this new deal.
Now, I want to disagree slightly with what you said, and it's a little different than what you said too. Here's my take. Danielle Smith is doing as much as anyone could do to get a deal. And I think she knows that this deal is not perfect. For example, she talked about the 9 bad laws, and this addresses 7 of them. So she's saying, look, you're putting a little water in your wine, but you're getting, you know, it's the nature of any negotiation. She's clearly gone as far as she could to get as much as she could. And here's my point. If it fails, if it doesn't go ahead, if no pipeline proponent comes forward, if it's killed by some extremist group, then, Angelica, I think the Premier could say, you know me, you saw me. I went further and harder than anyone in history to get a deal. I tried, I compromised, I gave up as much. In fact, my own party booed the deal. The deal failed, so now we go the other way. So, in fact, I have no inside knowledge, I've never talked to her about this, having gone as hard as she could to get a deal, if it doesn't happen, I think she could theoretically say, I'm on plan B now. I'm for independence now. It's just a possibility because she has shown she'll do anything for Confederation, but it might fail.
That's right. Danielle Smith has honestly been one of our best premiers we've had in the province. She's delivered on so many things, the gender issues, women in sports, so many things. Today she also announced a bunch of other things, and I think she's been a leader when it comes to actually advancing the Conservative movement and not being sort of a fake Conservative like we see in Ontario.
And that's the difference between booing the pipeline proposal and booing the Premier. I think this crowd is extremely, in fact, they support her. Last word to you, Sheila. Angelica mentioned a few of the other issues that were touched upon in the speech. There were firearms issues. Why don't you just quickly go through a couple of the other things, because it's not just about the memorandum of understanding on the pipelines. Transgenderism is a big thing. Fighting for school immigration. What are some of the other things?
huge applause, standing ovation for the Jordan Peterson law.
Oh, wait, explain that for a second.
So the Jordan Peterson law prevents professional organizations from attacking their members based on their political beliefs.
Which is what happened to Jordan Peterson.
Which is exactly what happened to Jordan Peterson. Now, that didn't happen in Alberta, but it is in reaction to something that happened in Ontario. And we know during COVID, many of the doctors faced consequences from the College of Physicians and Surgeons because of their outspokenness and skepticism on COVID.
I should tell you that I was actually consulted. The Justice Minister of Alberta put together a group of people who had been hassled in their professional organization. And they invited me because about 20 years ago, when I was a member of the Law Society of Alberta, there were more than 20 fake complaints sent in over my politics. So I have one drop of paternity over what happened, but they've been planning this free speech move for a while. And I just wanted to tell you that in my own teeny tiny way, I mean, it was certainly nothing on the scale of what happened to Jordan Peterson, but some of these changes they're announcing, they do take months or years to work it through. So I interrupted you.
No, and then I think the second most popular, or maybe equally popular, two policies was that our RCMP would not be participating in the federal government's gun grab. She would take additional steps. We don't know what that's going to look like, if it's going to look like what they're doing in Saskatchewan by creating a gun grab approval agency and then not funding it, or...
Gord, we're doing an interview right now. I'll say hi in a minute.
So we don't know what that's going to look like, but that she's taking additional steps to protect law-abiding firearms owners in Alberta. It's a huge issue for Albertans, but also on the issue of self-defense. We've seen...
Oh, there was a great line she had.
Yeah, if you're a dirtbag, don't break the law in Alberta, is what she said.
She's something like, if you don't want to be shot, don't break into it. It was sort of amazing.
Yeah, and so, that addresses the problems of the federal government with their catch and release laws, with their, taking away mandatory minimums, and changing sentencing guidelines based on systemic racism, which is one of the things that they did around gang-related offenses. So protecting our ability to protect our families in our own homes. So huge applause for that.
Well, very interesting. I'm so glad I'm here. The first thing that struck me was how big it is. Like, just enormous.
It's smaller than last year, though, by about 1,500 people.
Well,
People last year.
that's a great point. I'm trying to think of any other province where any other political party would generate this kind of turnout. I don't know, maybe Pierre Poilievre's federal conservative convention in the new year will, but this is just astounding. Thanks to you guys and the rest of the Rebel team. We are in effect here. It's wonderful to reconnect with our grassroots supporters. Although Rebel News is officially headquartered in Toronto, our heart is in the West. I myself consider myself a Western boy, even though I'm in exile. It's great to see everybody here, and this remains the province most dedicated to fighting for freedom, and that's why we love it. Back to you, and by you, I mean me.